First and foremost, this fund has a different objective. I know here in Abu Dhabi they have some development funds. Your fund is acting more like a development fund, trying to co-invest to bring foreign direct investment into the country. Who have been the partners so far with your fund?
Well, you're right. The idea of the fund is to bring good co-investors into the Russian economy, which is growing very quickly. So in our advisory board, we have chiefs of sovereign wealth funds of China, Kuwait, Korea. We also have such stars as heads of Blackstone and TPG and other key funds like Apollo. So the interest has been actually quite significant because people would like to invest in Russia, but they would like to have a very good, strong partner in Russia to invest with.
Yeah, in fact, you say they would like to invest in Russia, and I know there's a couple of benchmarks here. One is the Sochi Winter Olympics that are coming up, and then the Football World Cup. So most of this money, I would imagine, going into infrastructure. But the question always comes up, what's the political motivation of the fund, first and foremost? Are the politics weighing on where you're going to be putting your money to build out that infrastructure?
Not really, and we heard it very much from all of our co-investors, because we didn't just set up the fund on our own. We talked to all of the leading investors in the world for a year, and what we heard is that return is really what's important to people, and the fund is very much focused on return. So we are looking at projects in agriculture and logistics and other things that can produce good return and benefit, for example, from middle class that tripled in the last 5 years in Russia. We've invested our first investment in the Russian stock exchange, and we expect it to generate very significant return to investors, and that's the primary objective.
Now, how much do you have under management now, and what will you be the number by the end of 2012, in your view, with the joint venture capital that may join you?
So government is giving us $10 billion to manage. And we already received a commitment of $1 billion from Chinese Investment Corporation just 4 months from having started the fund. So that's very significant for us. But also, other investors are not investing in our fund. They're investing in specific projects. And that also makes it easier for them to invest only in the projects they like. So we expect that we will generate another 50 or so billion in the next 5 years of co-investment by investing with the people in Russia.
As you know, we're in a program that follows the emerging markets, but one of the themes that we've been bringing up is hot money into emerging markets in the early part of 2012 that could exit very quickly. There's an added wrinkle, as you know, in Russia. We're less than a month away from the presidential elections, and people are starting to feel very uncomfortable that we're going to a Putin 2.0, if I can discuss it that way, that this is going to be more of the same, and we're not going to see the infrastructure build-out that many promised. This is what really is behind the scenes here, trying to get this fund to invest directly and get investors to come in to the infrastructure components of your economy?
Well, John, you're totally right about the hot money, because the focus is obviously on longer-term investors, and that's what Russia needs, that's what many countries need, long-term investors who benefit from Russian growth and invest in infrastructure. But I think many people underestimate the ability of Mr. Putin to conduct reforms. We believe that he is going to conduct massive reforms following the elections, and by discussing this with our co-investors, lots of investors are actually very hopeful, because Russia has already achieved quite a bit, but it also understands all of the problems and all of the issues it faces. So we believe that the government will be addressing them, and much more so now when the need to address them is pretty apparent.
We're showing pictures of the people who were protesting over the weekend, and I looked at some of the poll numbers. 83% of them have a bachelor's degree, if not advanced degrees. We know the education in the Russian society right now. Why are they so frustrated, then, if you're so confident that the reforms are going to be pushed through by President Putin if he's reelected?
Well, I think we see frustration in all sorts of countries in the world right now. You know, I just read Tom Friedman's book about the U.S. called It Used to Be Us, when it talks about some of the issues in U.S. So I think there is discontent all over the world. But I think what protesters are saying as far as greater transparency and fighting corruption is important. And I think government will be taking steps to address that. So there are definitely real issues in Russia to be addressed. And I think the government is listening very carefully to what protesters and middle class wants. Middle class, as I mentioned, tripled in the last 5 years in Russia, and obviously wants more freedoms, wants more of a market economy, and government is doing lots of steps in that direction. For example, it's undertaking the largest privatization program ever in the history of Russia. So we are quite hopeful, but obviously we need to address real issues, real problems.